Trevor.
All right, so it's
Yeah.
1:58. We're going to go ahead and get started because we have a limited time with Tim May. Tim, normally I do a nice intro, but since we have a limited time, I want you to do the intro. Give us that highlight. Tell us who you are, where you come from. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daryl and Jim, for having me on this show here. Yeah, with it being a Valentine's Day, my wife's like, I told you this ahead of time. Going for lunch. So that's the reason why we have to I do have a hard cutoff, but a little bit about me. So I've been a real estate investor for 22 years now in the single family home space. And I got over here to the syndication side since 2000 since almost 2 years ago, April of 2022. And I yeah, I when coming into this and how I got into the industry, I was talking to a friend of mine who was doing a lot of fix and flips like I was, and he said, "Yeah, Tim, I don't do that anymore. These days, each deal that I do adds at least $1 million to my net worth." And and yeah, like that got perked my interest. And he shared with me, the multifamily deals that he was doing. And from there, him and I actually started a program together called the Teen Millionaire Challenge, because at that time his daughter was 16, my son was 17. And I got the idea of, hey, why don't we just teach all these young people how to go directly into multifamily, into syndications, and bypass the single family home stuff altogether. And so through that program, I get to witness for myself how, like, these kids are able to talk to brokers, make offers. They analyze over $1 billion worth of deals, underwritten over $1 billion worth of deals through that program. And so, like, that kind of reinforced the idea for me, more, that hey, if these kids can do this, I can do this. Um, that was the big limiting belief that I had, of why I haven't gotten into this industry, even though I've been in real estate all of these years. And so, yeah, so coming into industry, I looked at the different aspects of the business, and like the different roles within the business. I realized that capital raising plays the best to my strength, because I am pretty well connected. I know how to connect with people. I have a pretty good network. I have really good marketing skills, and so I decided to be a capital raiser, or specialized and master the capital raising side of the business. And so in doing that, I wanted to learn as much as I can on capital raising, and I want to learn it from the best of the best. And plus I want to bring a whole community alongside with me to learn. So I started my Facebook group May 1st, 2022. And then shortly after that, I started my capital raising party, which is our weekly virtual meetup, like what you guys have here, where I interview a top capital raisers, fund manager in our industry. I have now interviewed around 100 uh, of them, and yeah, learn a ton. And then I also have done now two in-person capital raising summits events. And yeah, each event have had somewhere between 150 to 200 attendees to the event. And so now, I have, when I first started raising money, I was coming in as coach GPs. And I quickly learned that you make very little money as a coach GP, doing the capital raise. Unless you're gonna raise a pretty significant amount, your part of the profit split is not that much. And so I just, I came up with the idea of, hey, if I have an army of us, if I have a group of, capital raisers, instead of coming in a deal and committing, 250,000 or 500,000, we can come in a deal and we commit, $2 million on up, which allows us to get much better economics. And yeah, so that's how my Heal Wealth Fund, as well as my Capital Alliance group came about. So we do fund of funds, meaning that we raise money for our fund, and then our fund invest in either syndications, in other syndications. We are looking at other funds to invest in, but we haven't actually raised money for any funds yet. Um, and yeah, and so that's a little bit of a background of, a little bit about me and how I got into this industry.
Fantastic, fantastic. So now listen, we're changing up the way we do things here a little bit, right? Because we have only a limited time with him. So what we're going to do, we're going to ask all of you, if you have a question, raise your hand. All you gotta do is raise your hand, because we this is about you learning how to capital raise, right? The GOB is about education. So we want there may be questions that you have about raising capital. And Tim is the perfect person to ask those questions to, right? So raise your hand if you have any questions, right? Raise your hand.
Yeah,
And
and I'll
and and, and while we wait for those hands, Tim, I want to ask you a question.
yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
when you first got started early on,
Uh-huh.
what was it that you knew that you had to have in order to be a successful capital raiser?
Great question. I knew two things. I knew that I have to have a community to be able to raise money from. And I knew that positioning myself as an authority in the marketplace is very important. I like been so part of my background that I haven't shared in the single family home space is that I used to also do a lot of events, and even very early on into my real estate business, I would host events because I realized that whenever I'm hosting an event, people, even if I have limited experience, but because I'm an event host, people give me the credibility as an event host. And so I get to win over their know, like, and trust a lot faster. So those two things I knew. I knew I had to be a community leader, which is why I started a Facebook group. I know had to be an authority, which is where I started the interview, where I'm educating. Even though I'm only a facilitator, I'm an interviewer, but I'm still bringing education to the community. And so, yeah, those are the two things that I knew I must do, and that's exactly what I did.
Great, great. I don't want to monopolize this. Does anyone have a question?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How effective, and if you can share the results of how effective has your communication been with your market of people that have been following you? So
Um,
if
yeah,
that's in deals, if that's in relationships, how effective has that been?
yeah. Uh, it's definitely been very
Yeah,
effective.
I'm sorry, I had a webinar scheduled at 2, but yeah, that
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
yeah, no problem. So I am now in I think 14 different complexes, over 3,800 units. Yeah, like in all different capacity, as an LP, as a co-GP, as a fund of funds. Um, you know, j- in December, I set out to raise money for just one deal, ended up raising for three deals. Yeah, like we raised over $5 million for those three deals. Um, and you know, and I realized the power because a lot of the investors that have invested with me throughout my whole um like since I've raising money in this industry, only um, um, only two of my investors have been people I know prior to me getting started in this industry. Everyone else has been new people that I built along along with all the marketing I've done. And so yeah, it's been so for me right now, like all the investors that invested with me are like first time investors and in many cases like first time getting to know me.
Right. There are so many. Oh, I'm sorry, Alicia.
I was just going to ask the follow-up
Go
question
ahead. Go ahead.
when you talked about being on 14 different assets and over 3,000 doors or units.
It's what same, but yeah, they're
Okay.
all multi-family, so it's the same. Yeah.
So did you raise capital for any of those? And
Yeah. I raised for let's think here. I raised for a good five of those. Yeah.
okay. And when you raised for those, what were some of the approaches that you took? Like if you can give us your most impactful approach when you went to your investors to speak on an asset, how did you go about doing that?
Yeah. So um it's nothing magical. You know, whenever we have a deal, we send them, you know, the pitch deck, the videos. I host webinars. So I'll first start with the email, and then from there, the people that I know have money to invest, I'll text them. And you know, and then we host webinars. So the people that show up for the webinars, um, you know, during Christmas, like for example, I personally raised over $1 million between uh, um, um, Christmas and New Year, like that holiday week. And I did all of the above: text, WhatsApp, you know, Facebook posts, webinars. Yeah. So however many like how much money you need to raise kind of dictate how much effort you need to put in. And so yeah, it's not I I haven't had any raise where it's just a one thing that I do. It's all about like doing everything that I know to do to raise the money.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Linda.
Hi. All right. Sorry, I jumped on a little late because I had another call and I was trying to throw in some lunch in between. But thank you, Daryl and
No
Alicia, for
problem.
today's call. Thank you, Tim, for being the guest. My question to you is, have you ever raised uh, how do you call that? Foreign funds, or have you ever raised for a foreign deal, and how did that go?
No, I have not raised
Hmm.
foreign funds or foreign deals. Um, you know, I do know of like one of the experts I interviewed was Matt Owens. He raised money from China, from Japan, you know, and it's just a function of so and then Reed Goosen also raised money from Australia. So I'm going to answer it in two different ways. So number one, if the foreign entity can create the foreign person can create a U.S. entity like an LLC in the U.S. that they
Mm.
can transfer their money to the U.S. LLC and invest out of that, then it's for you it doesn't matter because now you're dealing with a U.S. entity. Okay.
That makes sense.
On the other hand, if they're not doing that, they are truly foreign, then yeah, you just have to work with a international tax attorney that knows, you know, how much money to withhold on the taxes side. But no, I personally have not. Raising money for, I met a gentleman, he was raising money. He's here in the US and he was raising money for a deal, a development deal in Indonesia. And he said that he had the hardest time raising money from US investors for that. So he switched, he started raising money from Southeast Asian investors. So he went over there, raised money from over there, and it was a lot easier.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I'm asking because I came from Europe originally, and I heard that, you know, being in the US kind of gives an advantage with those foreign um investors because they're trying to get to the US market. So I just wanted your opinion on that since you've been so successful at it. And then I guess my other question that's semi-unrelated is how did you develop your avatar of investor, and what does it look like now? Like who are you really targeting, and how did you kind of mold your strategy around that avatar specifically?
Yeah. So currently, my avatars are other business owners, other real estate investors, mainly because since I've been in real estate for 22 years, real estate investors are a really big part of my contact list. Um, or if they're not real estate investors, they do something with real estate investors, like they're an appraiser, they're they sell insurance to real estate investor. One of my investors invested one of the deals that I raised for. He's um, he does construction work for investors, GC type work, and so real estate related is a big niche that I am currently. However, here in 2024, I am targeting a lot more doctors and dentists, and so, which is completely out of my niche. And so I am buying list of doctors, and so I'll give you a specific example of what I'm doing right now. So I have a deal in San Antonio that I'm getting ready to raise money for. And I live in Houston, so I don't know anybody in San Antonio. And not really anyways. And plus I want to target the doctors and dentists. And so I'm hosting a meetup in San Antonio. I'm pulling a list of doctors and dentists within 25 miles of where the property is. And I'm hosting a meetup there, um, so that way I can attract local high net worth investors, makes it easier to pitch that San Antonio deal because the chance of an investor that meeting me for the first time to invest in the market, that they know because they live there, is much higher than me trying to bring my other investors from nationwide to the San Antonio market.
That's awesome. And actually, I'm in Houston too.
Okay.
And we have our own meetup in Houston next week. So definitely let's keep in touch. I would love to invite you if you're available. But more importantly, I have a contact in San Antonio who is a syndicator. I think her and her husband do like deal that are more like under 50 units from what I know. But the lady herself is a broker. So if I can put you in touch with her, I think she would definitely help you with that if you want to. So yeah, let's stay in touch.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. All right, Greg.
Hey, hi, Tim. Thank you so much for actually doing this, your presentation. I know you were in a rush, and nonetheless, your presentation was very insightful. And my question to start with is, since I believe we all understand that any successful program is a process. And so what processes have you developed that we can potentially import and replicate the
Yeah.
success that you've had and perhaps even build on it?
Yeah. Great question. So, and this is from my own personal experience as well as from all of the different people I've interviewed, what I've learned, and kind of decipher down to the methods that have worked the best. So I mean, I'm actually writing a book on this topic. So I've broken down our whole capital raising down into 3 pillars: get known, get leads, get capital. And so, so in getting known, it's all about like getting your brands, getting your, you getting your brand out in the marketplace, as many different places as you can. I'm very similar to what I started with, starting with a Facebook group, so that way you become a community leader. That goes to your credibility, and then my virtual meetup that positioned me as an educator. My live events position me as an educator. Um, and then, I also go on other people's podcasts as well, like I am doing right now. So getting known is about being everywhere all at once, right? And, the reason why, like, even though I've only been in the syndication industry now for almost 2 years, a lot of people feel like they've known me for a long time. It's because I really am everywhere all at once. I attend events, I host, like whenever I attend events, that's another strategy. Whenever I attend an event, I would host meetups within that event. So for example, Trevor Thompson and I are attending Race Fest here next week, and we're hosting a meetup on fund of funds. We're hosting a meetup on social media marketing. And then Maria Marks, one of Trevor's team members there, hosting a meetup for women investing called She. And so whenever I'm attending events, so I'll give you an example. Let's take Best Ever Conference. The last Best Ever Conference I attended, I would create let me turn off my, you can see.
Okay, got it. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, so like I would I would start a WhatsApp group like this, and then have a QR code for people to join. So here in this case, like the last Best Ever Conference I attended, we had 89 people that are in that group, and I would host local, like, so I became, basically I'm almost like hijacking someone else's event and creating my own events from there. Leveraging, I should say, not hijacking. Hijacking is not a bad good word. Leveraging is a better word. Leveraging other people's events. I've done that, so like Jake and Gino's event, we had like 60 members. That was here's a bigger event. Have you ever heard of an event called Fun Launch? We did at Fun Launch, we had over 400 people because their event was bigger. It's like there's like 2,000 people at the event. But anyways, so that's get known, get leads. It's all about doing webinars, doing things that get people to opt into your funnel. So my weekly virtual meetup, every single every single week I have new people opting in to my capital raising party every single week. And then like all of these people that join my WhatsApp group here, they get invited to the party. And so they opt in. The webinars that we do that educate passive investors, they opt in. So yeah, so virtual meetup, webinars, um, lead magnets. Those are all around like actually capturing the lead and then nurturing those leads. The reason why I'm writing books now is because I'm using the content from the book that I'm writing to turn it into a mini course that once someone opts in, right? It's gonna educate them for X number of days. And then I'm also turning those content into like a small ebook type lead magnets. I'm turning that into a 10-week masterclass series on investing. Yeah. So those are all has to do with capturing leads, nurturing the leads, getting them to book a call, and then get capital, part of it. So whenever it gets, when I first got into this industry, I thought that, to raise money, I need to raise all the money all by myself, right? I I I didn't know how much the Code GP stuff was happening. And at that time, Fund of Funds wasn't popular, but I realized that, I only need to worry about whatever deal that I'm working on and raising money for. I only need to worry about raising for half of it. The other half of the deals, I can recruit other fund managers or co-GPs to come and raise with me. And so that's the other side. That's the reason why my capital alliance side, that side is not to raise money from the passive investors. That side is to have other capital raisers to raise with me on deals, so we can raise a bigger amount. And um, so get known, get leads, get capital. I know it's a long-winded way to answer your question there, Gregory, but I hope that answered your question.
Actually, that was terrific because again, we're here to actually absorb as much as we can. So the more you can give us, at least for me, the more I'll intake. So again, get known. Say I'm talking about get known, get what again? Three terms.
Get known, get leads, get capital.
Get capital and get money.
And
All
if
right.
you all didn't catch that, make sure you save the chat because those 3 items are there.
Right. Go ahead, John.
Thank you.
And then after John, we're going to have to do a very, very quick round robin if I could get through everyone, but we got to let them go at 2:30. All right. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Tim, how you doing? This is John Mishak.
Hey,
Quick
John.
question related to, did you join any groups that help you develop your funds, like the fund launch people or anybody else that's out there teaching and helping you get the paperwork and the strategies and so on?
Yeah, I did join Fund Launch Blackheart. I For the fun part of it, I did join Raise Masters to learn the capital raising part of it. Yeah, and then I've talked to quite a number of SEC attorneys by now. So and also talked to a lot of fund managers. My biggest even though I have joined these groups, my biggest education has been just talking to people that are doing it, right? Talking to people that are running funds, talking to people that are raising a significant amount of money. Yeah.
As a follow-up, did you use the systems in those launches, like the back office, the fundraising, CRMs and investor portals and so on that they came with them, or you went on your own?
I went on my own pretty much. I mean, because they're just third-party vendors, it's not included. If you're talking about Blackheart, that membership includes the fund creation. I did use their SEC attorney for that fund. But I've learned quite a bit since then and talked to more SEC attorneys since then. And so yeah, like the next fund that I've created. So that fund is this traditional blind pool fund. I have since also created SPV type funds with other attorneys. Yeah, things like that.
So we have 3 minutes. Jim, you want to ask a question? We got 3 minutes left.
No, let's let all the other members here have an opportunity. Tim and I can catch up at another time.
Sounds good. Okay.
I apologize for the short time. If there's a big demand, I can come back another time and we can spend more time too. So,
but there's always going to be a big demand for Tim. There's going to be a big demand. I'm gonna have you back here. All right, I'm gonna have you back. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, no one has a hands up, so I'll go ahead and ask one. So, Tim, why Hero Capital? What was the impetus behind the name?
So for the longest time when I first started my business 22 years ago, or even, even back in college and making money, business has always been or was very much about making money and earning a profit. And then about, let me see, 5 years ago, it was a little bit over that, but I just kind of went through my third life crisis or whatever you call it, and I wasn't fulfilled with where I was heading in my business, and so I had to take a look at my business and what do I want to make it about, and so my sort of my vision changed from my outlook about business, about making money, changed to business as a tool to make a difference. And so the Hero brand stands for Heart-Centered Entrepreneurs Enriching Others. And so it's so not and it's entrepreneurs, so it's not just me, but building a whole community of other heart-centered entrepreneurs, to make business about making a difference, make business about having an impact in our community, and not just drive everything based on the dollars.
All right.
So we do have another question in the chat, Daryl. So if we can squeeze that in real quick. Ifney said, if you could only recommend one tool for helping you raise capital, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, one tool only? That's tough because look, the truth is raising capital is not one thing. Like, we all like to have one tool, one strategy. As I explained, if I need to raise $1 million tomorrow, I'm not using one tool. I'm using all the tools I have in my belt to raise that million. And so, but if I have to choose just one only, I would choose LinkedIn.
Okay.
All right.
Daryl, wrap her up.
All right then. So Tim, listen, I thank you so much for spending this valuable time. This regardless of how much time it was valuable. You threw out nuggets and they say gold nuggets. I think platinum is higher than gold. So you threw out a lot of platinum and whatever's higher than platinum that came out too. So I want to say, Tim, thank you very much for coming to the Capital Raise Strategy session. Thank you for passing that information on to all of us, because we all are trying to raise capital. We all need help. And I'm going to have you back. I'm going to reach out to you and your team.
I'm going to steal one more minute, Daryl, because I don't want Tim to drop off without. Tim, could you drop in the chat or just tell everyone what's the easiest way to get in touch with you? When is your weekly capital raise if someone wants to come and attend that? So make sure and get that in before you leave.
Right. Yeah. So the best way to get into my world is through our capital raising party. That's my weekly virtual meetup. And so so once you opt in there, then whenever we have events and other things, we'll communicate through there. If you want, I don't know if there's an easy way. Let me see, for me to send to you also my my WhatsApp community.
And I'll also say that while Tim is looking to put that in there, there's several fund managers on the call here today with us, Tim. And if they would be interested in being interviewed on your program, do they reach out to the same website, or is there another place? Should they send you a DM? What's the best way to try to get in that space?
Right. For me to interview. So I'm looking for right now. I'm looking for people who have raised at least $20 million to interview. So if that's you, you can. Here, let me just send you my email address here. You can just email me. So whether you're a capital raiser or fund manager, you've raised over 20 million, reach out to me. Or if you know people, the higher the better for sure. Like I want to interview more people that have raised, hundreds of millions or even billion. That would be cool. I interviewed the biggest guest I had. His fund is now a $48 billion fund. And the gentleman have raised money from talking about international investors. I was chatting with him, texting with him a few months ago. It's like, hey, where in the world are you? He's like, I'm in Thailand right now. So what are you doing there in Thailand? It's like, yeah, I'm raising money from the government pensions. Like, that is badass. Like that's, you know.
So
All
Tim,
right.
we're 3 minutes over. So out of respect for your wife, who is probably fuming in the background, we'll let you go, but we'd love to have you back.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate you guys. All right, everyone, let's connect.
All right.
Thank
Happy
you.
Valentine's Day
Thank you,
to
Tim.
you and your family.
Okay. That was fantastic. That was fantastic. There was a question that Linda Holtz asked about foreign investors, and Edwin said he could help with that. So we're just going to keep this thing rolling for the next 26 minutes. Edwin, come on and help us out with them foreign investors, because we need all the money we could get.
I am out here on my back porch. Can you all hear that? There's somebody mowing next to me. Can you all hear that? No? Perfect.
No.
Okay. So, answer Linda's question, there are actually three ways that you can get foreign investor capital into the U.S. Tim mentioned one, which is the foreign investor creates an LLC. They need to have an ITIN number. There are companies that will help you set that up. It's typically a flat fee. They actually go through the process of creating the LLC, gathering the foreign investors' information, and then you basically set up the bank accounts, which they can help you do, or you can help your foreign investor do. So they have to have a bank account resident or nested, resided here in the United States. And then the foreign investor, once that ITIN is set up, and that ITIN number is basically an EIN number, but it's specific to foreign investors. Once they have that, the foreign investor funds that LLC. That LLC then funds your fund, and then you simply generate a K-1 for that investor. Pretty easy. It's the easiest way to get it done. A problem with that, some foreign investors, not necessarily because they're doing something nefarious, but they just may have hesitancy about being on the government's radar, if you will. I actually have some family member down in Colombia who are hesitant going that route. So that's one way, the easiest way. Be sure that depending on the type of filing you have with the SEC, whether it's a 506B, 506C, Reg CF, Reg C, Reg A, Reg A plus, regardless of the filing that you have, make sure that it is the appropriate filing to accept that investor based on whether they are accredited or non-accredited, right? So remember, the accreditation status does not mean is that investor accredited in whatever country they're coming from, because that country's accreditation standards, if they have any, may be different than the US. Any investor that you bring into your fund, regardless of where they reside and what their nationality is, have to meet the accreditation standards if there is one based on the exemption you filed for. The second way is to actually have it's called a, it's not a regulation. It's an amendment to your filing for an exemption. And it's called a Reg S filing. So Reg S is simply an attachment. It's not its own filing. It's simply an addendum to your Reg D filing, or CF or CA or A plus. All that does is it allows the fund to directly take in investor capital directly into the fund from wherever they're at. Now, there are international wire fees that you have to be concerned about. And then your CPA is going to have to generate additional tax documents besides a K-1, because they have to report the K-1 for income here in the States or generated interest. But they're also going to have to know, or the foreign investor is going to have a CPA in their country that lets your CPA know this is what our country requires, so that they can report that income in whatever country they're at. Reg S is probably most valuable for an accredited investor that lives in a foreign country. Okay, so Reg S would be, if you're going after accredited investors in other countries, having a Reg S attachment or addendum to your filing would be probably the easiest. The ITIN number would probably be the best for non-accredited investors that want to invest here in the US. So those are your two most commonly used. A third option, and this does cost costs a little bit more because the attorneys have to they have to basically create some additional entities, and it's called a Delaware Blocker Corporation. Now, Delaware Blocker Corporation is really helpful, especially for those investors that are coming from countries that might have, let's see, what's the term? Reciprocal tax status with the U.S. Colombia is one of those. Colombia does not have a reciprocal tax status with the U.S. So investors in Colombia that invest into the U.S., when they generate a return in the U.S., they get taxed in the U.S. and they get taxed. They get double taxed, basically, which is, it's not attractive to anybody. So creating a Delaware Blocker Corp is a great way to minimize taxation, not only in the country that they come from, but also in the United States. So Delaware Blocker Corporation, you actually have to set up 2 additional entities, one in the US based out of Delaware. So you're going to create a Delaware LLC. The other is you're going to want to create an entity as well as bank accounts in an offshore nation. British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands are very common in that regard because they have a lot of protective measures as far as that entity's ownership and what they can disclose and what they don't have to disclose. So it's very attractive to investors who want to stay off the U.S. government radar and have some privacy, if you will. So what you would do is basically create an entity and you create a bank account, which you need an attorney in one of those 2 countries to do. And whether British Virgin Islands or Caymans, we've identified British Virgin Islands. And so your attorney would then hire out an attorney in one of those countries. They set up the LLC, they set up the bank accounts. Then your attorney sets up a Delaware Blocker Corporation, an LLC, in the state of Delaware, as well as bank accounts for that entity. So you can immediately see right now there are additional accounting and accounting and tax filing that is going to be required if you do this. However, the benefit is the money flows in from whatever foreign country into British Virgin Islands. Once it's in that account, you would have control of that account. You then wire the funding from that British Virgin Islands into the Delaware bank, the Delaware LLC bank account. From that bank account, you would then wire into your fund account. Now, the big benefit to that for taxation, the U.S. government using a Delaware Blocker Corporation, and it has to be a certain filing that your SEC attorney files with the state of Delaware as well as the SEC. The SEC allows Delaware Blocker Corporation investors, which is your Virgin Island, technically LLC, it allows those investors to invest in the U.S. without any taxes. So the U.S. is not going to tax a Delaware Blocker Corporation at all on any income generated. When those income goes back to the Delaware Blocker Corporation and then it goes to the British Virgin Islands, there are several ways that you can do that. If your foreign investor wants to just keep the money in the U.S., then technically it's a way for them to generate tax-free generational wealth. So it's a great talking point for your foreign investor. If they decide to bring the money back to whatever country they're in, that's another reason why British Virgin Islands, Cayman, even Panama, the nation of Panama, is a great way because they may have reciprocal tax agreements with one of those nations so that that foreign investor is actually not even taxed on the money that they bring in from that country. Remember, in all 3 of those countries are not required to disclose what is income and what was principal balance coming back into that account. So any money that the investor receives back, the foreign investor receives back into their country is not going to tax that as income or as principal. It's because they have a tax reciprocal law in agreement with one of those countries. Colombia has one with Panama. We are still researching whether Colombia has a tax reciprocal law with the British Virgin Islands. I don't know, so I can't answer that question yet. I will say, as far as setting this up, it's extremely expensive. So if you're raising like a few $1 million and you're hoping to raise a few hundred from foreign investors, the Delaware Blocker Corporation process could be tax prohibitive for you or set up prohibitive for you as far as expenses. And it might not make a lot of sense. Up to you. So those are your three most common ways to get foreign investors into the United States.
My God, Edwin, I can't believe everything you just spilled out here. That was gold. We're definitely going to stay in touch.
So Edwin,
Absolutely.
On the first and easiest, which is the LLC, you said you can hire folks to do this for you. Do you have any recommendations if someone wants to reach out, an attorney or an entity, a corporation that specializes in that?
Great question, Jim. I've looked at a few. I personally have not used any yet. Again, we went ahead and went Delaware Blocker Corp route. However, if you go on Google, great tool, and you type in foreign investor ITIN company, you're going to get a list of companies that will actually help you set that up. And they'll walk through everything that they will help you set up. Some are much more comprehensive than others. Some are just, hey, we'll set up an LLC, give and file with the IRS to get an ITIN number. Those are typically maybe $100, $200. Others are a lot more in depth, like they will help file the K-1. They'll do some other things, setting up bank accounts, which is a big thing, but you can do that yourself. So it's not something that, and if you've ever set up a company, especially in the state of Florida, it's extremely easy. I would actually encourage investors or any state that does not charge state taxes. It's a great state to consider opening up an ITIN number in. It just depends on what your foreign investor is comfortable with. Maybe they have a preference. So I want my entity to be in the state of California or whatever. Well, then there's going to be additional cost to them for that. But that's what I would say in that regard. I can do some research and get back to you, Jim, and just give you as far as.
No, that's okay. I just thought you might have someone on top of mind that if anyone here wanted to, but that's a great suggestion, is just Google it. You'll find many of them. And the good thing there is that they can get, one of the obstacles to doing this is creating the checking account and signatures on the checking account. And you find folks that is the obstacle they can't seem to overcome. And if you're working with the right attorney, they'll have power of attorney and they'll know how to handle these things. They've already got banks that they work with, that they know the right person to speak to. They don't have to go through the same red tape that you would normally have to go through, and just have all of this already as a well-oiled machine. So it's worth paying a little bit extra to have someone do it for you. So,
yeah.
What other did we have any questions that Tim for Tim that we didn't get to answer that we can go back and maybe help folks out with? And if not, one other thing, Edwin, I know a lot of people, and I was going to ask Tim this, we just ran out of time, and I didn't want to start asking questions because then I won't know how to shut up. I think Tim is Filipino, if I remember right. And I was going to ask him, as he used that connection to try to establish himself as a thought leader there, to try to bring capital in from there. As a U.S. territory, it's a lot easier than being a foreign country per se, even though it's almost on the other side of the world. Yeah, I was going somewhere with that, and totally, I got thinking about a couple of other folks that are on the call now that have connections in foreign countries and can raise a lot of capital. They just don't know how to do that. Is there a way I don't know if they don't have or don't want to go through the expense of creating a Delaware Blocker Corp. Is there a way for them to partner with someone like you who already has one and can bring the capital in from the country that they are, say, have a connection or they're from there and feel that they have a lot of opportunity?
That's a really good question, Jim. That'd have to be a question I've run up the pole to the attorney.
So my first thought on that is, let's say I'm from Ireland and I know I can raise money here. I'm well connected in Ireland. And Edwin, I don't want to have to go through this. You've already done it. Can you kind of act as my liaison? And can I take like a, if I bring $1 million, 2 million, 10 million, can I take a fee for that and as managing the foreign investor here in Ireland and work with you to be like my, for lack of a better word, I can't think of the right word, but you're going to be my banker, you're going to be my attorney, you're going to be my entity advisor over on this end.
So again, I'm not an attorney, and I would highly, highly encourage anybody that's considering this to talk to an attorney. My gut reaction is, or my gut thought, and just understanding a little bit about how the entities are set up here, and especially because remember, ultimately what we're dealing with are investors, regardless of foreign. So once the capital gets in the U.S., now what are we doing with the capital? So a Delaware Blocker Corporation is specifically set up to invest specifically into a fund. The minute that Delaware Blocker Corporation maybe, and this, I might be talking around you, Jim, so let me know if I'm following a wrong thought here. But once the capital is in the U.S., that Delaware Blocker Corporation, LLC, if it begins to invest in other funds than the fund that it was set up to invest in, you basically would have to file another, you would have to create that entity as registered with the SEC under an exemption and basically create it as a 506B, 506Cs, also have subcategories, which I know you're familiar with, maybe some other people on the call are not familiar with, but it's called like a 5C3 or a 5C1 or 3C1. Basically what these subcategories determine is what can the fund invest in? A fund of funds or a fund to invest in other funds, it has to be filed underneath the 3C1, I believe, a subcategory. I personally have a 5C3 fund subcategory funding, which means only 20% of my fund can be invested into other funds as limited partners. If you have the 3C1 filing, then you can invest 100% of your fund into additional funds. But then there are number of investor restrictions, like you cannot have more than 99 investors. And there's some other things that your attorney would be able to advise you on. That's on the U.S. side. And the minute that Delaware Blocker Corp decides to invest in additional entities besides the one fund that it was set up to, i.e. your fund, now you have to look at potentially filing that as getting another exemption filing on with the SEC. As far as the foreign investor, let's say, Jim, I know you live in Ireland and you have some investors and you want to invest in the U.S. Now you would potentially be, especially if you say, hey, you can pay a referral fee or a broker fee or something like that. Like, yes, the onus is on that individual in that foreign country who's wanting to aggregate capital for you. Does that country require them to be licensed? What are the restrictions in that country? And I would be very hesitant to find a broker in that other country. Let's just use the word for what it is. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're brokering other investors to invest in basically through your Delaware Blocker Corp. I would be very hesitant to do that unless they carry some type of licensing from that nation's governing body for finances.
So if anyone on the call has a large sum of money, I would say $1 million would be probably minimum to show interest, and would like for Edwin to spend some money with his attorney to find out the answer. If you're able to bring that, you would be investing in, as he said, in his fund, and then he would be managing that money, deciding where it's best spent. So you're really hiring him as an advisor, as a sponsor. If you think of it in terms that most of us are familiar with, you have a lead sponsor on a deal, and you're investing your money, and that lead sponsor is making most of those decisions. So in a situation like this, Edwin would be making most of those decisions, and you would just be using him because he has the structure in place. But if you have, the potential to raise $1 million and want to talk about it, I'm sure Edwin would like to take that phone call.
I'll be more than happy to take that phone call. Now, one other thing I do want to mention, Jim, and for any any investors that are interested in raising foreign capital. One of the things that you need to be aware of when you're raising foreign capital is what is the propensity of the foreign investor to invest in the United States, and what type of investments do they want to invest in? One of the things that I have found, and you had Ray Ismail on the call, I think last week, and he's gone down to Colombia. Colombian investors, by and large, are very familiar with investing in single family properties as vacation, or as, hey, they're coming here to the United States and they want to have their friends or family set up in that, and just to be able to move the money in the U.S. out of their tax situation and just hold an asset. Investing in multifamily, investing in commercial, and even like my fund's primary focus, we do invest in syndications as co-GPs and LPs and other things, but the primary focus on my fund is investing in debt, meaning loans. We're making loans to real estate investors across all the different asset types. That's actually a very hard sell for Colombians. Why? Well, it's the familiarity, did I say that right? Familiarity with real estate investing in their country, and then how it corresponds here in the United States. If that foreign nation is not familiar with investing in notes like a bank, and that's not even a concept that they can understand, then investing in notes here in the States is going to it's going to be a lot of unknowns and what ifs and fear, right? Same thing like investing in big, large commercial or multifamily properties, even if it's on the syndication side, could cause some issues, because if they're just not used to doing that, that's not even anything that's available in their own country, much less how do they do it here in the States, which is thousands of miles away. That could be another thing. So before you raise capital from a foreign nation and foreign investors, I would say number one, having a local contact in that country that understands the mindset and the mentality for investing in real estate and the desire to invest in real estate in the U.S. What does that look like? You definitely need to do your research in that. And then identifying either syndicators, GPs, or investment opportunities to where you can come along and partner in the United States with that answers the need for that foreign investor, those foreign investors in that nation, what they are looking for. Now you're really creating an opportunity that provides a solution to both you're able to raise capital for deals, as well as a foreign investor, because now you're raising capital in asset classes and in the capital stack, whether it's a debt or equity, that they are familiar with. So just be aware of that. It's very feasible. You just have to know what the foreign investors are sort of looking for. And number one thing, identifying a foreign investor point of contact, like what you mentioned, Jim, somebody that's like from Ireland that can point investors. That would be very, very helpful. And then as far as them getting compensated, you have to understand, or they have to understand, the laws in the nation that they reside in.
Yeah, and I would encourage folks, if this is a path that you decide to go down, try to find yourself an attorney that you're very, very comfortable with, and let them do the outreach for you. And hopefully you don't find an attorney that you're comfortable with that's never done it before. Yep. You find an attorney that is used to working with other attorneys in other countries. Specifically, I know, we made this mistake 30 years ago with our in-laws' estate in Mexico, and trying to find our own attorneys in Mexico, and then we're having to find attorneys in the U.S. and then introduce them to each other. Everything works a lot smoother when they already know each other and they're already vetted by each other. So having an attorney that has 2 or 3 attorneys that he can go to in any other country that you may be interested in is invaluable. Great. And you can rely on their expertise for vetting them as opposed to your own, which, even if you're really smart and even if you know a lot and speak legalese and still not an attorney, put your they have some degree of fiduciary responsibility to you. So if shit hits the fan, then you've got something to back up to. Right. John, you have a question? You need to come off mute.
Yeah, the question I had was going back to the fund-to-fund model. So fund usually charges roughly a 2% management fee. Then on top of that, is it Tim? What would your fee be, or Edwin? what would your fee be to manage, investors' money when you're putting it into other funds?
So, great question. The way that I look at it is, most syndicators, and most of the people on the call are syndicators here in the GOB network. So most syndicators know this. If you're raising capital, let's say you're raising $5 million to take down an asset, you're going to break that into tiers, right? You're going to have your tier 3, which is going to be your just minimum investment amount, 50,000, let's assume, maybe 75 or 100, and that's your minimum investment amount. And that's going to get them typically an 80-20, maybe a 75-30 or 75-25 split, right? And then there might be an equity multiplier on the back end. The second tier might be like 500,000 or maybe $1 million minimum. And then the tier 1 would typically be 1.5, 2 million or more, right? The tier 1 is because if you can get a couple of tier 1s, now you funded the entire, and it reduces your workload. So the tier 1 is typically where you see 90-10 split. You also see, a higher equity multiplier on the back to where that investor is participating more in the equity. In the fund-to-fund models, one of the biggest benefits of having that type of model, and what I allow my investors to do is like, okay, you can invest. Let's say in my fund, the minimum is 50,000. So an investor invests 50,000, maybe 100,000. But now I have the ability within my fund to go be a co-GP on another fund or even an LP, but we're able to go in at the tier 1 level. So we're getting the tier 1 returns, and somebody is able to participate in that tier 1 investment, even though they would technically be a tier 3 investment in my fund, but now they're getting the type of returns that they would get at a tier 1. And all we do is we make a yield spread. That's what we call it in the note business. We make a yield spread on that 90-10 profit split as well, or the waterfall, as well as the equity multiplier. So real quick numbers. Let's say if the investor were going to invest themselves, they would be able to get 50,000. They'd be able to get 80-20 and maybe a 1.5 equity multiplier on the back end. At a tier 1, though, they would get a 90-10 and get maybe a 2.15 equity multiplier on the back end. Because we can come in and I'm aggregating, my investors are able to take down a tier 1. That means maybe the tier 1, the investor is going to get an 85-15 profit split. And so we're making a 5% profit split on the waterfall, or a half of, like 10% profit split on the waterfall. And then on the equity multiplier, instead of only making 2.15, we'll pass on to the investor a 1.95 equity multiplier. So they're able to get into a deal and earn a higher rate of return with a lot less money than if they were to go to that syndicator and invest directly. So by being an investor in our fund, then they can participate in tier 1 syndications with only having a fraction of that investment requirement. So instead of having $2 million for the tier 1, they can invest with only 50,000 and still get better than a tier 3 return, but not exactly a tier 1. So that's what I do. If somebody's not, and there are a lot of syndicators that, well, we don't offer those type of tiers. It's either, regardless of what you invest in, this is what you get. Well, those are syndications that we wouldn't consider.
Yeah.
All right.
So we are at the top of the hour. So for everyone that's new this week, appreciate you being here. Make sure come back next week, bring a friend, share the post on social media. And Daryl, Tuesday mornings.
First and third Tuesday of the month, we have a guest speaker, and we discuss underwriting. Our platform is specifically educating those on underwriting, how to underwrite, what you need to look for in underwrite, what are some of the key takeaways in underwriting. So this coming Tuesday, please, if you could be there, come on and join us at the Commercial Multifamily Masterminds for the underwriting session.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Jim.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good week.
Thank you.